This video brought to you by Common Room Games, the gamers' game store, located in Bloomington, Indiana. Learn more about the store, events, and everything else Common Room has to offer by going to www.commonroomgames.com. Hey everybody, this is Christina. I'm going to show you a review today, not a Tide of Iron. I can see where you would think that. But I'm actually going to show you Stalingrad. Stalingrad is the newest expansion for the Tide of Iron base game by 1A Games, actually. As you can see, fairly thick box, square box actually, pretty hefty too. So there's a lot of interesting components in this game. There's a lot of new interesting rules to add to your Tide of Iron base game. Let's crack open the box. Okay, so I'm assuming that you've already played the original Tide of Iron game. I'm not actually going to go over how to play Tide of Iron since we're just looking at Stalingrad right now. So I want to show you what was added to Stalingrad, some of the new features, some of the new components. So let's take a look at some of this, shall we? First off, like with any Tide of Iron game, you have rule books. So this is the rules of play and scenario guide. And then you have campaign rules and scenario guide. So you've got some nice books that add to the game, which you will definitely need because they have different specializations now. They have these new restrictions such as starving and unarmed. You have different terrain types that are on here now. You'll have collapsed buildings, etc. So this kind of covers that. And of course, just if you're familiar with Tide of Iron, you'll definitely recognize, for instance, the scenario setups. So here is the Iron Horseman, which is actually what I have set up now, and the diagram. So anybody who's familiar with Tide of Iron can really grab this expansion and then just kind of learn the new mechanics, the new things that have been added to this game. Of course, they've added some more cards, so you've got a lot more decks. And of course you've got the Russians. And then you have a nice Soviet reference sheet, which on the back side is a German reference sheet. This is not a complete reference sheet for the Germans. As you know from the original Tide of Iron game, you have the reference sheet on there for the Germans, so you'll actually need to use both of those if you want to. This only covers the tank if you want to use it for the units. And here's of course the tanks that they've added to the game. And as far as what they've added for the Germans, they've only added new tanks because you already have everything you need in the base game for the Germans. Most of what you see is from the expansion. Minus, of course the guys. You got your Russian guys, they got their specialization tokens on them. So a lot of it you would recognize. Now some of the neat features and new features for Stalingrad. They've taken this game to a whole new level. On the board, I have these little triangles on here that says like 1, for instance, on this one. And what that means this is a building that has multiple levels. So this building in particular has a ground level, and then it has a first level. And so you'll move throughout the building, and you'll be using your guys and going up. So if I said that unit's going up 1 level, we have these neat little moon-shaped tokens that will just simply go beside them, and that represents that they are 1 level ahead. Now if I had a bunch of units on here and it was getting awfully crowded and I could not fit all of these guys on the hex, you have this nice little board that sets this aside, and see how it's yellow here? You have the yellow token. So I would just set that here, and then I would just set all these guys in whatever level they would be in according to the building. So it's a way to help it from being overcrowded, because you can have multiple units occupying, the building, because you have different limits on each section. And then some of the other neat features of Stalingrad are the sewers, which this particular scenario I've set up is, again, this is actually the intro scenario, so it's just dealing with buildings. But for instance, if I had this here and I was moving a unit here, then I would instead take this particular color, if I, whatever color I desired, and set that here. So these guys would go off the board And then we have the area that shows as they're moving through the sewer and how far they would pop up. Because you initially put one fatigue token here, and then each turn you'll keep putting one on here, and that's how many spaces away that they can pop up through a sewage area. And you'll just put them off to the side, and you can pop them up wherever there's the other sewage, as long as it's within the area. One thing I had mentioned, I had said that the Germans are mostly at the tanks. Not entirely true, because you do get the German urban warfare deck, and of course the other decks that you could use for the different scenarios. Got the operation decks. This game comes with a lot. This is everything unpacked from the game so that you can see everything that it comes with. Of course, you got the reference sheets that I just showed you, the guides. This is everything. This is the tanks. These are all the Russians guys that you get right here. You don't need to buy any more Russian guys. You got exactly what you need to play Stalingrad. You got the big thick map tiles, tokens galore, the tanks, and they're really well made. You got a lot of really interesting components to the game. Now you're probably wondering, if you have the Fantasy Flight Tide of Iron, which is actually what I was using for playing this game, how does it compare as far as some of the colors between them? Let me show you that. Okay, there's definitely a color difference between them. For instance, here's different terrain features that you have in the Stalingrad. Now let's go ahead and show you. This is the Fantasy Flight base game that I was using. So there definitely is a difference as far as colorization. It's the same thickness, same print quality, so it's really just the color is a bit different. And then as far as these extra tile pieces, there is a definite color difference between them as well. So, you know, same thickness though, same build. Here's one of the boards from Stalingrad, and here's one of the boards from the base game. Yeah, there is definitely a difference in the color there, but the tiles are the same thickness, the hexes are the same size. Some people that may bother them, I personally don't find it a problem at all. I find it's actually interesting because Stalingrad was more urban warfare, whereas a lot of the base game of Tide of Iron was more out in the fields, so you didn't really have all the buildings and all the kind of destruction that took place. So when I got the chance to check out Stalingrad, I had played Tide of Iron once, so I got the opportunity to borrow a copy of Tide of Iron and to try it quite a few games. And I really got into it and I really liked it. Then came along playing Stalingrad, and I really enjoyed the things that Stalingrad added to the game. First off, the production is great, and it flows really well with the Tide of Iron base game. Some people may be upset about some of the color differences, but to me, it doesn't matter. I enjoy it just the same. I like the fact that the production's the same quality, same thickness that you have with the boards and the tiles and the cards. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the elevation is one of the biggest things that I instantly grabbed onto when I played the Stalingrad expansion. I enjoyed being able to jump in the sewers as the Russians and jump up and surprise the Germans. I also enjoyed the elevation changes that happens in the buildings, the different specializations that take place, the different operation cards and different command morale decks that you have going on. It makes Tide of Iron feel like a different game, but with the same basic rule set with added features to it. And that's wonderful about expansions. When you play a lot of this and you're kind of ready for something else, but you really are enjoying this, you can move up and join the expansion. And the expansion, you know, it still has that same great feel that you're used to from your base game. I will admit that I haven't played any of the other Tide of Iron expansions, so this is my first expansion into Tide of Iron, but I really enjoyed it. I also play miniature wargaming, and so this was something that I could easily take to, and I love the fact that with something like Tide of Iron, I could just buy the base game and I can play it. I can buy the expansion and add to it, but I don't have to buy individual units, and I still get the feel that I'm playing a miniature war game. I mean, in a sense, I really am. And you got the little guys on their squads that you can customize, and I really do enjoy what these games add. The original base game, I actually was fortunate enough to borrow a copy, is a very big box, as you can tell. Whereas the Stalingrad expansion takes up about half of the box lengthwise. There was a Kickstarter actually out for the Stalingrad expansion and also for the Next Wave edition. Next Wave edition is the base game, about the size of the Stalingrad box. So you're looking at about half the size. This will fit on your shelf. It still has the same maps and tiles. It still has the same plastic pieces that you get. If you already own the base game, you will not need to buy it in order to play any of the new expansions that's come out with it. If you don't already own the base game, then keep a lookout for it. It comes out sometime next year, probably looking at about late spring. And it offers a really nice rulebook that it's the same rules, but it's been laid out differently so that you get the opportunity to understand it, you know, rather than try to filter through these rule books in this base game, which isn't bad, but it could use some more reorganization. So that was something that 1A Games recognized, and they actually reorganized the rules to where you can get into it better. The scenarios are there. But if you already own the base game, then do yourself a favor and buy Stalingrad. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I found it really interesting and refreshing to play with Russians and Germans instead of the Americans and Germans on each time that we would play. So, if you get a chance, check out Tide of Iron. And thank you for checking out this video. May the dice roll in your favor. I'm like, I got a tank, you're going down.